Let's talk about furry stigma. Let's talk about some of the negativity, because if you spend any time online, it's not hard to find scenes of people hating on furries. Right? I didn't have to search very hard to find this. We can talk about some of the stigma that furries experience. When we ask furries, hey, compared to other online anime fans, ACON is an anime fan convention, and then sports fans, we find that furries are the ones who say that if someone knew the kinds of fan interests I had, they wouldn't like me very much. They disapprove of me. So furries have the most ostracized of these different fan interests, and they're, as a result, the least likely to tell other people about what they're fans of. They tend to keep it to themselves, the closeted furry, if you will. Right? They don't like to tell other people about their fan interests, in part because of this ostracism. This is an actual picture from the wiki, how to come out as a furry or not. And so what we find is that when you look at furries compared to a non-furry control group of average Americans, what you find is that furries are considerably more likely to have been bullied, especially in those formative identity years between the ages of 11 to 18. When you're in junior high, when you're in high school, you're way more likely to be bullied. 62% versus 40%, right? Almost 50% more bullying if you are furry, right? And this is on top of the fact that if you're furry, you're also more likely to be LGBTQ, which also makes you more likely to be bullied and picked on. So it's kind of a double whammy. So what we have here is a population that often gets bullied, right? Often gets picked on, often gets ostracized. And we know from research in developmental psychology that ostracizing and picking on and bullying someone is one of the worst things you can do for them. It's terrible for their psychological well-being. It creates anxiety, it creates depression. And we know that when you make someone anxious chronically for years and years, it takes a toll on your body. It hurts your heart health. It hurts your immune system. Right? So by all accounts, furries who are much more likely to be bullied should be experiencing all kinds of negative symptoms. And yet, we don't find this. When we compare furries to non-furries on every measure of well-being, we can find furries are near identical when it comes to how happy you are, how solid are your relationships, how satisfied are you with your life, how much have you answered those big questions about who you are. Furries are no different from anyone else, despite the fact that they ought to be worse off because of this bullying. So what's going on? What's different about furries? And this is something that we've argued in a paper we published for social workers and clinicians who deal with furry clients, because furries get anxiety and depression just like anyone else. And they go to therapists just like anyone else. Unlike non-furries though, when a furry goes to a clinical psychologist and they say, well, I've got depression, well, tell me more about you. Well, I'm a furry, hold on a second, and they Google furry and they go, we gotta fix that first. That happens. That happens a remarkable amount. We actually published this paper precisely to address the fact that this is what a lot of clinicians were doing. In fact, we made the argument that clinicians weren't taking this seriously. The first time we tried to publish this paper, we got a one-line response. It is unprofessional of you to waste our time with a submission like this. Which kind of makes the point, doesn't it? It was eventually published, and it is now being used by clinicians and therapists and social workers who work with the furry fandom. Don't treat the furry. The furry is not the problem. The anxiety is the problem. The depression is the problem. This statement here nicely summarizes. This is a quote from a furry in one of our studies who said it better than I ever could. If you feel unaccepted, if you've contemplated suicide, I've had those dark times. I was seriously contemplating it, and once I found the fandom, it saved me. I want people to know that we may seem weird, but there's always someone to help and accept you here. And that really is what makes the furry fandom, isn't it? It's this sense of community and belongingness that it brings that a lot of people find elsewhere. If you're not a furry, maybe you turn to your church group, maybe you turn to your work friends, maybe you choose to your colleagues from school, right? For furries, we just turn to our fan community, right? This is our social support network, and it's that sense of social supports that accounts for that difference. It's why we don't see a difference between furries and non-furries when it comes to well-being, despite the fact that furries ought to be worse off. Okay? What is this? Right, we find that for furries, about half of the friends that they have in their lives are furries as well, something you see in a lot of other fan groups. This isn't unique to furries. If you like sports, you tend to hang out with other sports fans. If you like anime, you tend to hang out with other anime fans. Furries are just kind of unique in that the thing that they hang out with other people for, tends to be ostracized or stigmatized by the media. And when you ask furries directly, why are you here? What is it that really brings you to this fandom? And you give them a huge list. Well, they make it really clear why they're here. The number one reason, even more than art and furry content, is the sense of community and belongingness that it provides. Right? Again, to address the misconception, the idea that we're all here for sex or for porn or some kind of fetish, way down on that list. It's community and belongingness that are bringing furries together. And in fact, when you ask furries, compared to other fan groups, so how closely do you identify with this fan communities, furries beat them out. Right? Furries have that closer knit sense of community. To talk more about this community, it's a diverse community, not just in terms of gender identity, not just in terms of sexual orientation, but also diverse in terms of things like religious beliefs. We tend to find that furries are kind of all over the board. About a quarter are Christian, about a third are atheist or agnostic, 10% identify as, or 11% pagan or Wiccan. A big mess of everything else. As it turns out, when you give furries a big blank space, they'll fill it with something. We also see a range of political attitudes in the furry fandom. We're a very diverse fandom, both in terms of these features that I've talked about, but also things like politics, whether you're very conservative or very liberal. Bernie Sanders is like my favorite political pun, by the way, here. I found it funny. What's interesting about this figure, by the way, is the difference when it comes to the different issues. This is one of the things we're looking at this year in our survey, is getting more into this issue of politics. Socially, the red bars here, this is things like social progressivism, things like being okay with gay marriage, being okay with transgender rights. The furry fandom is overwhelmingly liberal on these topics, right? Not surprising considering many furries are LGBTQ. When it comes to economic issues, things like Medicare, things like welfare, things like what we spend money on, it's a much more mixed bag across the board. Some liberalism, some conservatism, some sort of middle ground. Furries are kind of very diverse in that regard when it comes to their political orientation. And as a result, when you get people disagreeing, you can sometimes get what we call drama. So you may have heard the term drama before. It's not a uniquely furry problem, but we can delve into it a little bit and see what it looks like in the furry fandom. And as it turns out, we've come up with a scientific definition of what drama is. I swear to God, we're working on a paper right now to try and scientifically define what drama is. You want to hear it? Yes! This is the scientific definition of drama as we're pushing for it. This is what makes drama drama. 3 things. First of all, there has to be some kind of conflict between 2 people. 2 people are having an argument about something. But that's not drama in and of itself. People fight all the time. Secondly, it gets blown out of proportion. Right? A small fight has become a much bigger deal than it probably should have. But that's not enough to be drama. That happens sometimes too. The third thing that makes it drama is social media or public involvement happens. You have some kind of disagreement, everyone's watching, and now you've got drama. Right? That's what makes it drama. Those 3 things are a really nasty combination for the sorts of things that we call drama in this fandom. And not just in this fandom, across fandoms. Any online fandom, you're going to see this nasty combination spring up from time to time, and it's going to create drama. Now, it's really easy to trivialize drama. It's really easy to kind of laugh and say, ha ha ha, drama llama, it happens, lol lol lol. I want to suggest that we take it seriously in this fandom, because we've asked furries, have you ever thought about leaving this fandom? Have you left this fandom before? And if so, what made you leave the fandom? The second biggest reason furries left the fandom was drama. This thing that we laugh and don't take seriously, as it turns out, that's one of the biggest reasons why furries may leave the fandom. So I want to argue that we should, when we see this sorts of behavior happening, when we see conflict happening, let's take a step to kind of get proactive and get involved in trying to resolve it. Not spread gossip, not fan the flames, or sit by with popcorn and watch it happen, because that's causing folks to leave the fandom. I would argue that if we want nice, big, healthy fandom, let's pick up the trash in our fandom, let's tidy it up, and let's take steps to actively work to combat it, rather than fueling the flames and giggling as it burns down around us. A humble suggestion. I want to argue as well that part of the reason people overestimate how drama, or how prevalent drama is in the fandom, is something we call pluralistic ignorance. We ask furries, hey, here's a bunch of behaviors that some people might find to be problematic. How much do you engage in these behaviors? And then how much do you think the average furry engages in these behaviors. The blue bars are how much you engage in drinking and smoking and partying and drug use and risky sex and reckless driving and eating unhealthy and bullying. And as it turns out, for every one of them, people vastly overestimate how much it happens in the furry fandom. When you actually look at how often it happens, a lot of furries don't drink as much as you might think. They don't party as much as you might think. There's this idea that, oh, it's a crazy party con. Actually, it's happening. Those parties are happening, but they get a lot more attention than you probably might realize. Something to keep in mind when you're talking about how prevalent drama is. You're only noticing the handful of times it happens. They stick out in your memory. But you're probably vastly overestimating just how prevalent it is in this fandom.